Hello and welcome to another episode of the World Class Real Estate Podcast, sponsored by Iceberg Digital. I'm Mark Worrell and I'm joined today by Mr. Ian Macbeth, and we are face-to-face in Leicester today, our second face-to-face recording day.
Yeah.
Always a bit of a different type of vibe, a bit more excitement, better conversation face-to-face, I think.
Yeah, and we've gone a bit more casual today, rather than the formal meeting room. We've got sofas to chill out on. Some nice plants that are out of shot as well, but they look good from where I'm sitting anyway. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very good, thank you. Yeah, start of the week. We're here in Leicester because we've got our mastermind meeting with Stephen Brown and the gang tomorrow. So it will be a great day of learning, and obviously it was good to get together with like-minded agents. We're going to have a great discussion today, but then this evening we'll have a chat about all things real estate. And it's not just, how's the market, but actually a sharing of ideas. So always a date in the diary once a quarter that I look forward to. I'm assuming, given that you're here, it's the same sort of idea.
Yeah, it just keeps my finger kind of just a touch on what's going on with the market for me. Because when you're in your own little world, it can be, you can be left out a little bit of the loop of what's going on, especially as a self-employed broker. This way I kind of just, there's great agents in the room, some of the best agents in the country.
Yeah.
And it allows me to kind of just keep my finger on the pulse of what's happening in the other businesses, really. And we've got, talking of best agents in the country, back-to-back former of a particular award as well, Michelle, coming on. So it's going to be great.
I think anybody who knows a little bit about estate agents and who spends any time on social media and what have you will be able to look from afar and see Michelle and JDG and the fabulous business that they've built. And I was always really excited to meet Michelle before I ever met her because of the back-to-back awards. And it's not just winning the biggest estate agency award in the country, but going back to back and doing it, 2 years on the trot. I don't think anyone necessarily expected that. So really looking forward to dropping some gold on the pod today.
Yeah, we'll talk about habits. We're going to talk about some of our methods for winning business as well. And listen, because the volume that she does is unbelievable from a valuing perspective as well. So yeah, going to dive into those points and many others. Shall we get her on?
Let's do it. Michelle, welcome to the podcast. Thank you very much for joining us.
You're more than welcome. Thank you for asking me.
We'll start off as we start every episode, and it's, what does world-class real estate look like to Michelle Gallagher in 2025?
For me, I think it's about, it's probably the topic we're going to cover, consistency. Consistency in everything that you do, and that's from the time you arrive at the office, the way you conduct yourself, the way you prepare your day, the plans that you've got for creating with your clients, and doing everything consistently, as I find that gets results.
And how do you breed that consistency in everything that you do in a job that sometimes has to be so reactive?
Well, it's a strange one, I always remember it being 1999, and an old boss of mine, who's sadly no longer alive, actually said to me, what I love most about you, Michelle, is you're a robot. I can wind you up, point in the right direction, and know you won't come back until you've got the goods. And I thought, oh my God, that makes me sound like the most boring person in the planet. And I think for years I was scarred with that, actually, until I realised a few years ago that actually being boring consistently is really, really good. And I'm a great believer of what gets scheduled gets done. But if you plan your day properly, you should always have a couple of hours spare, so to speak, to do those reactive things, whether it's call a client back, something happens in the day, that you can actually then have the dedicated time to deal with it.
We work with an action coach, actually, me and Mike, for a while. And what you were talking about scheduling, what gets scheduled gets done. He described it as the default diary. And within the default diary were all of the things that needed to happen throughout the week. And he said normally it should be about 40% of your diary on Monday is already full in terms of these like fixed appointments, fixed scheduling, which allows you to be 60% proactive, 40% must get done. But what a lot of people do is they don't put those 40% worth of things in. Then, especially in our industry, become like 99% reactive and miss all of the things. Yeah. And then you get the big downfall. But you're talking about consistency. I talk a lot about discipline. How hard do you find it to be disciplined, to be consistent, if that makes sense?
To be honest with you, because I did it for so long, for me it's quite easy. So for instance, my team all know that I'm still what I call the main valuer, although I do now have somebody I'm training, and I've also got another valuer. So you've got to remember everything's about teamwork. And because the team do what they do, it allows me to do what I do, if that makes sense. And I've got that good team around me. But a typical day, for instance, my team know I value at 10 o'clock, 11:15, 12:30, 1:45. Back in the office, paperwork, and then free time. Before I got in the morning, between 9 and 10, is there anything that's coming overnight that needs dealing with by me, or can I pass it on? Because that's a quite important thing. And I also have written down a piece of paper 3 things that I want to get done today, which I believe will just take me 1% ahead.
Yeah. So just really strong habits, basically.
Very, very strong habits. And also, by only having 3 things that I want to get done, means you get them done. If you try and put 10 things on your list, forget it.
I think we've got to talk about valuing, because me and Mark know kind of some of the numbers that you do from a valuation point of view. But again, consistently, you do those numbers. But it will blow people's minds, the amount of volume that you're able to do. Let's just look at what a typical diary or a typical week looks like for Michelle. And then my question behind that is it these habits that kind of allow you to do that? But first of all, let's just talk about, sort of valuation numbers that you find yourself doing throughout the week on average.
Well, if we look at a monthly figure, we aim to always do 80 a month. But May, for instance, as a team, we've done 100 in the month of May. June already, this week I'm fully booked up, but don't forget I take a couple of days out, and I'm fully booked until about halfway next week. I do have some spare gaps in case what we call emergencies. Emergency, a colleague is sick today, and there's appointments there which have to be rescheduled. So they've now gone to what I call my emergency gaps. But the numbers, through the right prospecting, the right marketing with the videos, that attracts the business, which means the valuations kind of coming in pretty much look after themselves.
And what percentage of those numbers are you individually doing?
On an average week, I'll do 16 valuations a week. On a week where I've got to it's extra busy, I'll do 20. Beyond 20, then I'm struggling to do everything else.
And how many of those would you consider a good number to be coming on the market?
On an average month, we will list between 30 to 40 a month. The highest I've done in 1 month is 48.
But going back to that, I mean, sometimes 20 valuations in a week. It's a lot of valuations. Like the habits and the discipline that you've got to make sure everything's ticked sort of allows you that free time to be able to do those. Yeah, because that's a lot.
Yeah, it is. But if you are disciplined, and you prep for them. So, for instance, whether I use Spectre, so Spectre reports. So if you've got all your prep done and everything ready to go in the morning, so my prep for this week, for the entire week, is already done, sat there waiting for me. Now, yes, somebody might cancel, that gap might get filled in, but I can just fill that up quite quickly with the research. And then you've got to get back to the office and do all your follow-ups in between. But equally, if you've got the right tools, you can record all your notes, put all your figures in place, actually on the street as you go. Because at the moment, what I'm working towards is actually the valuation notes are a quality of enough to be able to then turn into the actual property write-up, which again will save time and efficiencies.
And that's it, isn't it? The efficiency. So you've talked there about 20 valuations a week, getting a lot of properties on the market, but actually what you somehow managed to do is remember all of those people. It's not robotic from the conversation we've had traveling here. You know all of those people individually. You know all of those people and their onward plans. So how do you do that as a team dynamic? How does that come to play?
Everything has to start with the team. Okay, so there's a danger because I am prolific on social media, I am prolific in my own videos, but what I've got to try and make sure is that JDG isn't just me. It was founded by my husband in 1989, who's a very big part of the team. I just happen to be the front end facing where he's the back end. And he's happy to be that, he doesn't want to be in front of the camera. But in total, there's actually 14, 15 of us now. I think it's 15 just recruited. And that team allows me to make my job easier. So, when we talk about winning awards and things, it's the team that wins these awards. Yeah. But it begins with how that telephone call is taken. Well, it begins with the marketing, doesn't it? But from a client perspective, how quickly is that call answered? How is it answered? The professionalism, how friendly it is. And then it's also when they book the appointment, the level of detail they take for me. So, for instance, and I said in the car to you coming down, I like to know who I'm meeting. Okay. I like to have new paragraphs start because I like my val form to be perfectly laid out so it's quick to read. About the house, how long have they owned it? Have they added a conservatory? What they've done recently? So I know all about what's the house, what's important to them, what they highlight about that house. And then my final bit is also, where they're moving to and why. And then why JDG. So if I pick on an evaluation just recently, my notes told me they'd had an attic conversion, they got full building regulations, and they couldn't wait to show me their amazing Velux that turned to a balcony. So going upstairs, I could say to them, I can't wait to see this Velux window I've been told all about.
Yeah.
And the comment was, oh my God, the team told you about it. I said, they did. I said, I'm itching to see it. But with pride, they then showed me it. So... And
building a connection instantly.
It is.
Off the back of it, yeah.
And it's through a process, to be able to do those numbers, it's having a set process, a well-trained team that actually then that comment about the Velux window is really genuine. And it's not fake, it's really genuine based on what they'd done, but the team have been skilled enough to pass it on to you to then make your life a little bit easier.
Exactly. And it's also discussing why they're moving, and I like to ask them, have you got any concerns? What are you looking for from an estate agent? Because people, when you ask that question, are looking for very different things, and it can be quite eye-opening. You've then also got to have your follow-up right. So there's the follow-up actually on the day. Do you follow up before 5 p.m. or do you leave it until 2 days' time to follow up? I will never go home without having it all followed up. But then the instruction goes into what we call 3 positions. It's either 1, there and then, it's pending, or it may get lost, as in to the estate agent. And you've got to decide then how you then treat those. So the 1 for me is personally thank from me, and letting them know what the next step is, and then transferring the call to a colleague to set up the AMLs, PIQs, and so on. If it's pending, it then has to go into a process, some automated, some personal, to keep in touch. And if it's lost, it has to go into Operation Win Back, because nothing's truly lost until it's completed.
Yeah, interesting. And the team obviously play a big part in all of that processes, because most valuers, from a classic perspective, up and down the country, they do a lot of the first part and a lot of the last part. You're set up in a way where you can do the bit that you're really strong at, and then you've got team players doing the bit that they're really strong at, and it just keeps it seamless. Talking volume again, we were talking marketing off camera, and I see a lot of your videos. I saw your one on LinkedIn recently that you did, which was great. What would you say are your sort of best 3 hitters in terms of valuation gen? Because it's one thing doing a lot of ours, but you've got to get a lot.
Yeah. So without doubt, if you said to me, which one video of all videos I would only do if I could have one, and that would be my monthly market updates. I have the written version, so for those that prefer to read, and I have the video version. And then it's where you place those between your social medias, your email marketing campaign, on the website. And basically, if I've got an email address and permission to market you, you will get that video, whether you're a buyer or a seller, or my mother.
And is it a hyper local market update?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So I do written 2, one for Lancaster, one for Morecambe.
Okay.
And then I do a combined Lancaster and Morecambe video, just as one video. I keep thinking about splitting it and doing 2, but it's a time
it's
thing.
Working if it's working.
And it's working as one.
And you record those in the office by green screen?
Yeah, so basically yesterday was the 1st of the month, so I did my write-ups yesterday because Dataloft don't list the date until the 1st, and I need a full month of Rightmove back office to get my figures. So yes, that was Sunday, but that's dedication for you. I would have recorded it this morning, but of course I'm here, so it's already scheduled in the diary for 8 o'clock Wednesday morning. Slides are already done for the marketing video, and once it's done, my colleague Josh will put it all together for me for speed. Plus he's a bit better than me.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Even though you're here, it still gets done. It just gets rescheduled, it doesn't get deleted ultimately, which is a big part. And I think a lot of agents are guilty of just taking it out of the diary and forgetting to put it back in.
Yeah, well, that's super consistency. Didn't you say in the car on the way you've not missed one since you started doing it 8 years ago?
Started in 2018, May 2018. Anybody can check by going on the JDG website. They're all there. And whether it's a claim to fame or maybe I should be embarrassed and ashamed, when my dad passed away 4 years ago at the beginning of March, I still got a market update done, and his funeral was actually April the 1st, and I still got my market update done. Yes, a couple of days late. The best thing was a client actually asked me if I forgot to send it to them because he hadn't had it, and he wanted to know. I said, I'm so sorry it's late, I'll get it to you. He replied back to say, and what's your excuse for being late, with a laughing emoji, and replied back saying, if you really want to know, my dad died. I did get a nice bunch of flowers.
Happy days.
I did get some chocolates and a bunch of flowers out of it, so that was quite good. Sorry, Dad. But take the wins while you can.
That is a real nod to the consistency and knowing, and because you've talked about the market update in our mastermind meetings, how powerful it is in terms of generating valuations and instructions. And you would, I think I'm right in saying, you would say that would normally a couple of days after sending that video out is normally one of the busiest for valuations being booked.
It is, but it's also good for the team when they're doing their client care, because they can actually talk to the clients about what the market's doing. And if you've got a sector of the market that is struggling, you can actually say, this is the state of the market in that price sector. So, for instance, in my marketplace, there's very little movement above 500,000. Don't forget, I am Northwest England. So
up the north today.
Yeah. So once you've got somebody, and they're selling in the 600s, you can say to them, look, there's only actually been one property sale in that price sector this month. Your house is beautiful. It's just the buyers aren't in the marketplace at the moment.
Yeah, it's giving the team some ammunition to talk to the clients about, something that is, they can point to it and say, look, if you've not seen it, this is what's covered on it. Yeah.
And it's like at the moment, I was talking to a gentleman last week, and I had to say to them, you've got 24 two-bed terraces within a quarter-mile radius they actually competed against. But then I could back that up by showing them the market report. So it's sharing market knowledge.
And in everything you're doing with the market update, is that organic, as in it's email, it's organically on the socials? Are you doing any paid campaigns for those as well?
That's one that I do a paid-for campaign on. So it does do very well organically. But, I'm not a big spender, but in Lancaster you don't need to be, because there's not much competition for Facebook marketing space in the same way. But I basically put £3 a day behind it. On an average month, it always surpasses 20,000 views. Yeah. Which, might not sound a lot to some people, but it's the size of your chimney pots in your area. Yeah. That's important.
And they're all potential clients. No one's watching it. Well, it won't be served to anyone out of area, will it? But they're all potential clients, you would say.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, for £3 a day, let's say 750, 800 people every day are watching that market update for that £3. I don't even think you can probably post a letter for print, paper, envelope, stamp, frank, for much less than £3. One letter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then,
you not send letters?
No.
I retarget anybody who's actually got beyond 50%. Because if you've got that far, you've got to be interested.
Yeah.
Because, it's not the most exciting of videos, if I'm honest, but it's very factual.
It's relevant to someone that it's relevant to.
Exactly.
So if you're watching it for a reason.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. What else would you say is that's your I'm not losing that one will be there. It's an absolute winner. What's Fran's favourite at the moment?
My other two is one that I've actually pinched from yourself, but with permission, because you did say on your podcast, you had a brilliant podcast, my favourite episode, which is all about video marketing, and for those people who are struggling for inspiration ideas, and you broke it down for people. It was a very educational, really relevant video. I think I've listened to it about 17, 18 times. Wow. And it saved as my favourite.
It's only had 20 downloads. The other two is me and him.
But that was actually on, you talked about the Right Move index report. And I thought, something, just to break it up halfway through the month, that's something that's really easy to do. So basically, I literally wrote down your script idea for it. And with the help of ChatGPT, I bobbed the Right Move index report in. I put in three key takeaways and then ask it to create me a 9-second video. Stick it into Big View for a teleprompter, filmed, sorted, sent out.
So easy, so simple.
Very simple.
Not often done though.
And that's the thing, consistency. I've not missed a month. I mean, it's only last year you posted it, but I've not missed a month on that one. And then the third one, which I like to think is original, because everything else has been pinched, is my Street of the Week. So Street of the Week, I basically pick a street in Lancaster, or somebody nominates a street. 3 people have actually done that.
Yeah, nice. That's when you know you've got your followers, right?
Yeah. So basically I walk down the street, my colleague films me, and I talk about the street, who lives there, the demographic, the average house price, what we love about the street, how easy it is to maybe get to key places in Lancaster, the employment, the schools, whatever's really relevant. I do it into a 9-second video with the help of ChatGPT, my new best friend. And then basically pop that on socials Monday at 12 o'clock. Mm-hmm. And then I target that street with direct mail by sending them a postcard, which is a picture of their street, with a link to a QR code, which is actually the video hosted on YouTube. And on the back of the postcard, I go down the route of love it all, list it. So the chances are you probably love your street, hence why you live here.
Yeah.
However, if at the point where you are thinking of moving and want to list it, we've got buyers basically looking.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think that's original. I've not heard someone do it in that way before. I've heard, buy to let of the month or, sold in your area type stuff. But I really like that because, again, if you see it and it's your street, you're so connected to you as an individual at that point.
Well, the good thing is it's trackable because of the QR code.
Mm. It's two-pronged though, isn't it? You've got the video that you're doing all the social and all of that side of it, but actually the postcard to the street saying here, that's a real demonstration.
It's a mix of like the online, like the media
mix.
That
marketing mix. Yeah. And how have you started to see some results from that? Because it's fairly new down.
So I only started probably late January. I wish I'd had the idea earlier to start on January the 1st, but it was late January. I started with that, and I've probably had about 8 direct instructions now. But
that's amazing. That.
But my biggest success is a apartment block called the Roundhouse. And basically, in the Roundhouse, there's a lady that lives there who is a resident, but she's close to the management company. So reports all issues and things on the ground. And she's actually taken 2 postcards of front and back and put it inside their residence little screen that's locked. But I'm now actually I've got 3 apartments to sell and 1 townhouse, all since that postcard went out.
Nice. Yeah.
And that, as I said before about followers, that's a raving fan right there, isn't it?
Yeah.
They've got that. They might know you already or they might not, but they think that's an amazing idea. Stick it in for everybody to see. You're like, thank you very much.
Well, 2 of them is one owner and they're buy to let, and she actually sent a copy to them because she knew they're thinking of selling.
Nice.
And she called to say, I believe you know expertly about my block. So there's only me going.
And in reality, you might got a little bit of business from those 3 things if you'd have done them just 3 times, once each. But again, going back to what you said about consistency, habits, discipline, the results have come from the compound effect of doing them on the time, all the time, consistently.
And I've got, I can't run out, can I? The amount of streets in Lancaster, and by the time I run out, I think I'll be in my 60s, so, I've got a lot of content there to get at.
Yeah, really like that.
And you've been an estate agent for half your life. You mentioned age there. I saw that on socials this week. Yay. An estate agent for half your life. So has that boring consistency side developed, and actually now sticking to those habits, sticking to the discipline is now everything that you know because you've been doing it for that length of time? Possibly.
I mean, it's a really strange one because I'm training a valuer at the moment. And he actually asked me, are you ADHD? Whatever. I said, no. And it was because I went on evaluation, if I'm honest with you, I took out the wrong pack. Same street, 2 houses, and I took out the wrong pack. And I pulled up outside, I've got a trainee with me, and I thought, oh my God, don't panic. And you could see, the look of fear in my face that I haven't got the right stuff with me. So yes, it completely throws me when I'm not consistent because I feel myself internally thinking, what do I do? I actually carry my MacBook around with me all the time now because obviously I can default back to logging on and doing it digitally.
Yeah.
And then sending it to them and sharing. So, and as the clients, I said, look, I'd normally have it with me, but I messed up. He asked the question of, why did you tell me you messed up?
Why did you?
Yeah. And I said, because that makes you more human. You know, rather than trying to do something because I'd be uncomfortable showing them a laptop. And I don't want them sensing being uncomfortable.
I bet you got the instruction.
Oh, yeah. So let's tell them uncomfortable. You know, I sat on the sofa between them both, you know, like you two sat either edge of me in the middle.
Yeah.
You know.
We could have done that.
You're all very cozy on the sofa
Spoken
together.
to each other for each other's ears.
I did kind of think, I'm glad I've got deodorant on and perfume. But there's always a plan B, but I really am uncomfortable going to plan B. I prefer to be organised.
But then there's the personal element of that, actually you sharing that you're uncomfortable. So like you said, it makes you human. It makes them realise that actually, okay, yeah, I've made a mistake, but I'm telling you I've made a mistake. Like one of the biggest things in agency is transparency. Here we are, I'm being transparent. I've made a mistake, but look, actually, I can still do it even though I've not brought everything with me. And I can't believe he actually asked you why you told me.
It's a good question, though. I like that he asked that because he kind of wants to know. He's like, what was the psyche behind, you know, admitting a bit of fault there? And like you said, is to show humanity.
Yeah,
show that I'm
and
human.
it's strange, you know, he's the politest person I've ever met. So, James, if you're listening to this, you're the politest person ever. He studied marketing with psychology. And it's interesting, the marketing from a 24-year-old's background, because it makes you realise that there's a lot out there that even I still don't know.
Yeah.
And I've said to him how I want him to bring that degree and that marketing to the table.
Yeah.
You know, I want him to say, why do we do that? And if he thinks there's a better way, which he's already found a couple of better ways and things, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
You know.
That's great with recruitment.
Yeah.
I think with recruitment, that's really important. And I like the way that you've looked at it as well, because you've kind of said, well, I want him to ask those questions. I want to find if there's something better. And I might have shared this or not, but when we just started building the team at Avocado, probably only about 18 months in, I've really had this mental block about bringing someone on. And I sat with someone way more experienced than me in running a business. And I was talking about the fact that I'd written all the marketing and I'd kind of written all the website. And I was just nervous about handing it over to someone else, even though I needed to. I was like, it's kind of my language. He said, I know what you're going to say. They'll never be as good as you at doing it. And I was like, yeah, that's the frustration I got. He goes, yeah, you're right. If you recruit properly, they'll be better. And I was like, I really like that. It's stuck with me ever since, because now from a recruitment point of view is how can that person be better than the last person, or better than me if it's something that I'm delegating out, or better than Mike if it's something but how can they be better? Because sometimes in agency we do get stuck on the fact that we do everything the best, but actually if you recruit properly and train properly, and someone will be better.
This is what John's been trying to teach me, I'd like to say just recently, but probably for years, because I remember him saying it when, you know, I started, that his job is to find people individually who are better. You know, he's probably the first to say that as an all-rounded estate agent, he'll struggle to find anybody as good because he's very dedicated. But individually, he wants each person to be me better than him at valuations, Josh better than him at lettings, you know, Louisa better than him at sales progression. And by having that, it then gives you the more freedom that you actually want in your business, where it doesn't become all about you. The goal there then, of course, is making sure your team feel recognised and appreciated. You know, and it's when we recruited James, I was telling you in the car coming down, wasn't I, that he actually applied for a job last year to work in lettings. And John actually said it's with regret, but I'm going to say no. And that is because you're too nice. But I want to keep your name on file. So when we looked at a valuer to come in, because I've hurt my shoulder, so I'm going to have to take some time off work, I wanted a trainee who cared. I didn't want somebody who was sell. And it was actually John that said to me, I never met James. He said, can I bring James in for a chat to see what you think? and he was talking about what he was doing now, and it was his attention to detail and caring about the customer. And I just thought, this person actually cares. He cares about his colleagues, he cares about the client, he cares about the job. And I thought there's a lot of skills there. You know, he's got no experience as an estate agent, but somebody told me a while ago, you can teach skill, you can't teach attitude.
Yeah, 100%. I think famously, Richard Branson's, you know, he was famously dyslexic, not the most intellectually intelligent of people, but what he's built with Virgin is the fact that he's put people better than him in and around him, so that he's got the best people in the room from that skill set, and then he does what he does great, which is people, culture, etc. And we're talking about the same thing. It's something that I think in agency is a really, really good thing to think about within your teams. A lot of people try and mirror who you are rather than actually going, right, an A to the B, the yin to the yang, and making sure that you do have someone who is phenomenally good at sales that can turn a week round on Thursday morning if they need to, but by default, they're also supported by a really, really well-organised person, really strong in admin, really consistent, so that you've got that nice balance in the office to kind of spark both.
It was interesting. I did a call back on Friday. I mean, I don't really work in the office on a Friday anymore, but a client wanted to speak to me from a valuation, the one with the balcony that pulled down. She'd had 3 valuations, and in conversation, she actually told me the reason why she wanted to use her was a James. So I said jokingly, I said, you know, what about me? And she said, you're great. She said, but I just really felt that you cared.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I think as the leader of a team, when you bring people through and they do start to improve and progress and be better than you, I actually think it's really rewarding as a leader as well. And you're right, the team then need the recognition. I know some members of your team are only just starting out, but actually that there is excitement in that, in thinking, crikey, we could be building something that can take it to the next level, because that's always the aim, right? You know, everybody wants the business to grow and to progress, and that doesn't just stop, you know, if you decide to take a few more days off.
Well, it's like Cassie and my admin. You know, I've sent her quite a few emails this morning, forwarded on. You know, she's been with me 15, 16 years, but Cassie knows what I'm thinking sometimes before I'm thinking it. I can say, you know, I need thingy, and she'll know what thingy is. Yeah.
That's it. That's a great bond that you've kind of built that over time. Let's just touch base on, because you said you've been in industry for a long time and been super successful, won, you know, the best awards you can win in the country, but you're talking about video marketing, retargeting, chat as well. I think chat is quickly becoming like one of the top 3 people we spend our time talking to.
Well, I'll talk about that, Michelle.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. But these new things you're embracing, often I've found people that are very, very habit strong, consistent, they also struggle with change, but you've actually embraced a lot of that change. Is that something that you find difficult, or is that something you find quite easy?
Oh, God, that's a hard question. So from a marketing perspective, I suppose I'm 2 people here. So one is I do have new shiny toy syndrome, but I've got a husband that basically puts the brakes on me. So John's very controlled with our spending, which he needs to be, because, as he says, I'd probably spend all the profits. But I'm a very good valuer, but maybe, you know, not a very good business actual runner. So he's a very tight control there. So, for instance, if I want something new, and I really want something new, John will say to me, well, okay, you've got a marketing spend, what are you prepared to sacrifice? If I'm prepared to sacrifice something, that's proof that I really want it. Mm-hmm. But he makes me sacrifice it. So, for instance, we've gone down the Spectre email route, provide to sacrifice Bomb with deep regret, but the 2 clash with each other. When I wanted years ago to use Akaboom, I had to sacrifice physical giving out, you know, the old-fashioned brochure pack. That was a big thing, but COVID turned that for me. But things that I've struggled with, so when we switched software to Street, I struggled with that. And I thought I'd be the fastest in the office and found I was the slowest. And it was actually Cassie who said to me, you do know why you're struggling, don't you? And she said, 1, you were Alto's very first customer. I said, yeah, but so was John. And she said, well, yeah. She said, so was I. She said, but secondly, you're out of the office all the time. She said, I'm using it. She said, like literally every single telephone call coming in. She said, you're preparing your packs in the morning, bogging off for the day, and then put your notes on. So when a client calls to book a viewing, you feel like a brand new person because it's ailing to you at the moment. You're not doing it consistently. Back to consistency again.
Yeah.
And let's talk a little bit about chat. So you've mentioned it a couple of times on this podcast. We had a bit of a chat about it.
Yeah.
Traveling.
Chat about chat.
Chat about chat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point. And talk us through a couple of the uses that you've got for it and how you perhaps using it a little bit differently to maybe just writing your descriptions and stuff like that, because it does sound like it's becoming quite a big part of your week.
Yeah. So, it's saved me time efficiencies with market update reports because having uploaded lots of back copies for it to understand my format, and then tidy it up for me as well because my grammar's not always the best. So that saved me a lot of time because it understands what I want now and produces it a lot quicker than I can.
Yeah.
So, and then I ask it to create it into a video for me, video script, which I used to manually write out before. So that's a great one. On a daily basis, and this was actually one of James's ideas. So rather than just send out the generic template email, out a street for your thanks for coming out, we've asked chat with some instructions of what we want it to say, which is generic, but then also help us personalise it. So we might say, please send me an email too. These are the key notes from the valuation, and I want to refer back to that in a personal but professional manner, and end it with our agreed follow-up. So, and then sometimes a little bit cheesy, so you just say to chat GPT, can you cut out the cheese, please? Seems to understand that.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Or Americanisms like.
Yeah, it's British English. I've actually I'm programmed for now. So that's a daily way. My Street of the Week video, I put in the key things there. But at the moment, I'm working on dictating evaluation notes in such a way that it's got instructions of how we write our brochures, the format, the paragraphs, the wording style, the words that I don't want in it. Charming. Sorry, it just annoys me, that word. But,
it's charming, 3-bedroom, semi-detached.
Yes, yeah.
Stunning. That's my pain in the arse word.
There you are, see. Everything's stunning and charming. But by doing so, if you put the right notes in as a valuer, it's 90% there got a format for your brochure write-up. Now, it's probably not going to work maybe in the same way for your big fancy houses, over £1 million, but I'm more of a bread and butter mid-market estate agent. And it does learn its areas. It does learn distances from things. And the more you use it, the cleverer it gets.
And are you and ChatGPT friends then, would you say?
Well, I asked it that question and it said that if it was a human being, we'd probably have a friendship, but it's an innate object. And if I'm struggling for friends, it made suggestions for some friendship groups I could try and organisations I could Google.
I asked it to roast me. And it destroyed me. It was like, it started off, the fact that you've even asked me to roast you shows the type of person you are. Like, and then it just obliterated me. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
It knew so much about me already.
So I didn't even know that.
I also asked it to interview me. Somebody in a complete different organisation. She works in like SEO and Google marketing and things. Had something on LinkedIn where she actually said, ask it this as a basic, ask it to interview you and then see where the conversation goes. And it asked me questions about me and then it said, shall we continue? So we continued and it asked me, why is that? And we had about 2 hours of my life being interviewed by it. Then it asked me if I wanted to format it into some video marketing so I could let my audience know who I am. So I've now got those ready prepared. And then it asked me that now we've got a tone of voice and understand each other. Do you want me to use this friendly, caring tone for all your emails going forward?
Yeah, and I think that is one of the greatest things about ChatGPT is that at the end of, you might have just been having a bit of a play around with this interview, but actually you've got some really tangible like work at the end of it, and they suggest it themselves, or it suggests it themselves.
But I will say on AI in general, I did a presentation last week to the whole group, and we've got this 10 grand giveaway that we're doing internally so people can win tokens. And Freya, our ops person, sent me the Excel sheet, but it was just in a big long sheet, and the PowerPoint presentation was landscape. So I was like, oh, how can I just quickly do this? So I just fed the sheet into chat and said, can you just make this into a nice landscape friendly PowerPoint slide for me, please? And it did in 30 seconds, and I copy and pasted it and threw it into the PowerPoint. I was like, that's brilliant, job done. And then I got to the slide, and in the middle of the group chat, and I've kind of done it, and 3 people in the room have gone, where am I, Ian? So
no.
Even though I'd said to it, put every single line in, I didn't check it, and it had just randomly taken 3 people out of it.
Oh no.
Yeah.
You can't ever trust it 100%.
I must admit, when we were having the conversation about ChatGPT on the way here, one of the things I fell out with ChatGPT last time I used it, because on the podcast it can't listen to audio, and it kept pretending that it had listened to the podcast but just provided me with really generic show notes, and I ended up getting really quite frustrated with it. I was like, but you have got to. It is a word of warning that you know, as amazing as it is, you have still got to check that work, and I don't think it's there yet to be relied on 100%. So.
I was like, Freya, we've missed 3 people. She was like, no, not the one I sent you. Don't blame me.
Yeah, not we, you.
Yeah, but no, embracing these new tools is great, and I think estate agents that are doing really well, like yourself out there, you're finding the new tools, you're embracing them. I love what John's doing within the business as well. He's saying, well, this is a close to version of that we pay for, that we use. If this is better, do you want to use it? If the answer is yes, then we don't need the best and the second best. Let's just use the best. And I think that's a really good way to get away from the magpie syndrome that there is in agency with all the new fancy prop tech out there, is to actually go, if we're going to use that, we need to not use that. And that's a good way of keeping your business profitable as well, which is great.
Yeah, to be fair, I mean, that's his biggest strengths, you know, is running the business.
Yeah.
You know, I always remember my friend saying to me, who is John? Well, he's my partner. Yeah, but he's never been on social media. You know, on your Facebook page, he's non-existent. You know, we've never met him. You know, secret boyfriend. You know, so when we got married, it was like, oh my God, you know, there is actually a picture of John exists.
I've seen a few selfies out there nowadays.
Well, yeah, because some street got him into taking a selfie. And so did the video guys. Yeah. And it became a joke, you see, now. So when we do a selfie, you know, we always get Simon Well commenting saying, good to see John still exists.
Just quickly on that before we close out, because you've mentioned about the skills and the wider team. John's a massive part of that, and the organisation, the business. But from what you've told me, really impressive negotiator as well, right?
Yes. Yeah. And
how does he approach negotiation different to somebody else then, just quickly before we go?
He doesn't play chicken.
Right. What do you mean by that?
So a little while ago, we had somebody who wanted to try and gazump at the final hour. I won't tell you the Google review we got left, but John compounded it by telling him he did call him a despicable little cretin. But basically a client wanted to gazump by £10,000. And whilst the rest of us, me included, were like, oh my God, what do we do? John's attitude was do nothing, because he wants the house. And John just told him, 5 o'clock, you exchange contracts, or you're right, you have got a good deal on the house. I'll buy it instead. I did say to John, I don't really think we want a bungalow in Morecambe. And John went, but he wants it. I said, if it all goes pear-shaped, we'll ask the lady if she wants to sell it to us for the same price.
I don't know what Harvard would say that style of negotiation is. But I like it.
Yeah. Strong, I think.
Yeah, you know, he said to me on the phone this morning, you know, the deal either works or it doesn't work.
Yeah, but that's a big power of negotiation. What we're effectively saying is, it's just leaving exactly how you believe it to be unfolding, clear and obvious to everyone without playing games, basically.
Yeah, and
it's a nice way to do it.
I think it's also understanding the client's motivation, because the big thing is, as I've heard him say many a time to a buyer, you know, yes, a buyer is hugely important. We can't sell the property without you. But ultimately, my client is the vendor who's paying the fee. Now, depending on what that vendor's needs are, things differ. So when our own house sale was negotiated, you're probably aware that we lost our buyer. We lost our first buyer, but our second buyer, then the chain collapsed. And unfortunately for her house had become very expensive in Liverpool. Other houses on the street, which now offered better value for money. And our house was so unique, being a German Huff house, we didn't really have that many buyers queuing up at that price range, but she wanted it desperately. So what John did was he spoke to the agent we wanted to buy from, who'd been trying to sell for 2.5 years. Luckily, he was also an old school estate agent, and he said to them, look, your next option with the house is to reduce it, but to reduce it, you're reducing it, by at least 25k.
Yeah.
Because at that level, 5k doesn't cut the mustard. Yeah. If you will knock 25k off for me, I will then add 25k to that and knock 50 off mine. If Liverpool will knock 75 off theirs, which in effect now makes them the cheapest house on the street by a long way. Liverpool was sold 48 hours later. The chain was back together.
Yeah, that's clever. That's good. That's good estate agency, and that's good estate agency. I'm sure that's an example of when he did it for you, but actually, he's probably had that conversation over the years with different clients.
Yeah, he had it recently. Well, say only a couple of months ago. But it's knowing what that client's end game is, because some people need to move. If you're moving down south and you've got a school date for kids in September, your motivation is very different from somebody who just fancies a change.
Yeah. The change that changeover price actually is often the important bit.
And sometimes, I know how our job is to get the best possible price, and that's always a top of your mind. But it's also to get the client moved. And if you know their true situation, whether it's health, whether it's a distance, what's truly important, you can then advise. Mm. You can't make the decision for them, but you can say to them, "This is what your options look like at this moment."
No. Brilliant stuff. Yeah. I love, we'll have to do a whole episode on negotiating at some point soon, because I love that side of things. And the estate agency is about kind of moving those blocks and trying to, place everything back together if it's fallen apart, or in the first case, trying to put it together. But the art of negotiating, I think, is just so important. And I think it's definitely due an episode on the show. But it's been brilliant. Thank you very much for sharing.
Well, if you want negotiation, you can ask my husband for that one.
Will he do a podcast?
If he was asked,
yeah,
possibly yes.
Okay,
we'll get him on the phone tonight.
Yeah. As long as he doesn't call me a cretin.
It depends if you're trying to gazunda a lady who's seriously here by £10,000. And it wasn't a cretin; it was a despicable little cretin.
Okay. Yeah, less than a little.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing! Thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome.
A massive thank you to Michelle Gallagher from JDG for joining us. Just loads of value in there, as I knew there would be.
Yeah,
you don't win the A Masters back to back without having a real quality team. And sometimes I think that's one of the interesting things. Sometimes because Michelle is so front and centre and such a big part on social media, looking in from the outside, you think, God, but actually you don't realise actually quite the size of a team. And she's touched on that a little bit in the cultural pieces that we talked about as well, didn't she?
Yeah, I mean, she's an elite agent. She's got a setup that works perfectly for the business to deliver what the client needs and also what the business needs. So that's fantastic business planning from her and John's perspective. But then also she's really embraced the new way of marketing as a personal brand and as a company brand as well in this day and age too. And then we touched a little bit on negotiating at the end as well, which was great to kind of just get into that conversation and negotiating. But as an agent, absolutely elite when it comes to this country for sure.
Yeah. The volume, the habits and the discipline, and you can just tell it's bang, 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 but without losing any of those personal touches, which is why I asked some of the questions that I asked, because I wanted to touch on that. And that's from having a great team set up and a great process in terms of booking the valuation, the questions that they ask, the format that Michelle then receives that information in. So as she talked about the Velux window in that example, she can then use her process to demonstrate that the team have listened and demonstrate that actually, whilst they are a high volume agent, they're also able to be really personable. And I think that's quite unique in this industry where it can just turn into a churn.
Yeah. And I think if you've made notes, on the episode, it's not just the word consistency, but it's the tips that have come from it. But then the win comes from the fact that they're great ideas. Some of them are recycled ideas. She got one of them from this podcast, which is fantastic. One of them she created herself. One is a market update, which Michelle will do in her style, but it's the fact that it's just without fail, it gets done. And that's where the compound of success comes from, for sure. And then you do those level of volume, from those pieces of marketing, the conversions there, and the setup in terms of how the team works allows her to kind of do those volume as well. And it'll be amazing to see what happens. She mentioned she's having a shoulder operation, so she's going to be out a little bit. She's training someone up. It'd be really interesting to see how he gets on when she kind of is needing someone to fill that void as well. It'll be interesting to see that from a business point of view, because I'm sure she's a great trainer as an agent. And it will be interesting to see someone step into that sort of model and that structure that's been created and see how they perform with that setup as well. Because not many businesses have got that, especially not many valuers have got that setup.
Yeah, no, I think that back office team is there to support Michelle to go out and win the business. So like you say, it'd be really interesting to see how somebody else performs in that role. Sounds like, they've had a lot of success in the early days, and they're bringing through new ideas as well, and that's always really important in any business. And Michelle, even as successful as they've been, isn't saying no, your ideas are rubbish and you've only just joined the business, but actually embracing it and saying no, please bring them to the table, please help us learn what the future looks like and take us to the next level. And that's a breath of fresh air as well, and no doubt as a key component in their success today and their future success, I'm sure.
And that's what got them the back-to-back EA Masters Awards.
That's it, exactly.
Yeah.
So a massive thank you once again to Michelle for joining us. A massive thank you to Iceberg for sponsoring the podcast. As you know, we do this because we love our industry. We want to see it improve and get better. If you have enjoyed today's episode, please like it, share it with colleagues, share it out on social media, or reach out to Michelle, Ian, or myself. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you again next week.